Hi, my friend. Sorry, I took time to make this recordings because I was still working. Yeah, so your question was on slave trade. Why people like Christians doing their own stuff nowadays without following what was taught in the Bible? So I've just put a picture here to remind us of the slave trade where Africans were shipped from Africa to America. I'm sure you know the story. It happened from the 15th century to somewhere 18th. Just from the pictures here, are you able to see how they were being carried, chained? It means most of them were not willing to go. Look at that. Look at this here. They were not willing, but they were forced to go. So I'll base this discussion on the example you've given on slave trade. And these are my opinions. In Christianity, we can have our own opinions, but at least we should quote the Bible. Okay? Look at this picture, how they were being treated. So I think we can see from here that slavery is not a good thing. And that is why they had to abolish slavery. But slavery has been there. This was not the first time. Slavery has been there thousands of years, even in the Bible, and so on. So, when you're a slave, I assume you don't have really the power or the choice to make your own decisions, and most of the decisions are being made by your master. And so you don't have a say when the decision is made most of the time, because if you do that, you'll be considered to be disrespectful. You're not submissive to your masters. So, from my perspective, I feel um, something like something that's not good, even if it's being practiced or it's being allowed. At some point, people should make a conscious decision to say it is right or it's wrong. So I'm going to show you some Bible passages, and I'm going to base on slavery itself as to why us Christians condemn some of the things that were happening in the Bible. You know, the Bible has stories that were just some people are doing things and they are recorded. And then we also have times when God is speaking and they are also recorded. I think the difference with you Muslims is in the Quran is just when God was speaking. But in the Hadith, that's where you find other stories of the Prophet, his companions, and so on. And you can agree that the Hadith, we may find good stuff and bad stuff. But in us Christians, everything is in the Bible. If somebody did something wrong, it's recorded in the Bible. Because every story, God is giving us a chance to learn from it. So, you should know that, again, some of the things God allowed is because the people, the Israelites, were crying out for certain things. So God, our God is God of love. Our God is a God who gives you a choice to follow him or not to follow him. And that's why we don't force people to come to our religion. There's nowhere where you say, kill anyone who lives Christianity or force someone to become a Christian. There's nowhere. It's up to you. And also the other point I want to make is just like you Muslims say Muhammad is the seal of the prophets, okay? As Christians, we say Jesus is the final. So we end at Jesus and what Jesus taught us through his apostles. Two of his apostles wrote the Gospels. Him was teaching, they were recording, just like Muhammad was receiving the revelations and his scribes were writing. That's why you always ask, like, where is the Gospel according to Jesus? every gospel that's recorded in the Bible, the 4 gospels, are about Jesus' life and what he taught. So we name the people who wrote those books. Okay? So, because Jesus is a seal, our seal as Christians, and we believe because he came from God himself through the Spirit, God's Spirit, and him being the Word of God, he's from God. And he says, me, I'm coming from where my Father sent me. I'm going back where I came from. Okay, there are a lot of chapters. So we take him, his final words, as our words, and we are going to live by that. I'm sure even you Muslims, you are taking your prophet's words as the final words. Okay, so let's look at the Bible, how slavery was bad. We'll start with the birth of your ancestor Ishmael. According to our Bible, Ishmael was born from a slave. Abraham stayed for so long without a child, and the wife was becoming impatient. So she offered her slave. It's written here in Genesis chapter 16. Okay. So now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abraham, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through you. Now, like I said, this is not God speaking, but it's a record of how Abraham and the wife were living without a child and their thoughts. And like I said, God gives us a free will, but we should never, ever, we should always try to strive to live in a good way, okay? We'll see in the future. So they agreed. After they agreed, so Abraham took the slave girl. Now, remember I said slaves usually don't have a choice. And I'm sure this woman, we don't know. Maybe she didn't want, okay? But because the master said, she had no choice. And maybe she liked it because Abraham was rich. I don't know. We don't know. But for me, issues like sex, a woman really, women are particular of having with the people they want to have sex with. And she knew, I'm just being used so that I can have a child. I'm not going to be married to this man. And let's see. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Who's the mistress? Abraham's wife, okay? So, because now she feels that authority, after all, me as a slave now, I'm pregnant, my master doesn't even have a child. So, she becomes pompous. And pomposity itself is a wrong act, okay? Because now she's disobeying the master. Look what Abraham's wife said. Your slave is. Oh, sorry. Let's read here. Then Sarah said to Abraham, "You are responsible for the wrong." Now they start blaming each other. For the wrong I'm suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. So your slave is in your hands, Abraham said. Do with her whatever you think is best. Then Sarai, who was Abraham's wife, mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. So even now the master or the mistress to the slave started mistreating the slave in her pregnancy state. She started being mistreated to a point where she thought of running away from her. I'm sure these were really big punishments. You are 6 months pregnant, for example. She's telling you, wash these clothes, cook this food, do this and do that. That's mistreatment. And us in Christianity, we believe in love. I'll show you in the future. So she ran away. You see, you can read the whole chapter 16. I won't go there because it will take too much time. Okay? So this passage shows that one, the slave was forced to sleep with Abraham. Check the name. This is Abraham. By this time, God had not made a covenant with Abraham. When he made a covenant with him, his name now was changed to Abraham. In Christianity, when God makes a covenant with you, usually even changes the name, okay? That's why Paul was Saul or Saul before he became Paul. I know you guys hate Paul, but don't worry about that. Jacob was changed to Israel when God made a covenant with him. So there's a number of times where names were being changed in the Bible when God speaks to you or when he has an assignment with you. So this was a time before God made a covenant with Abraham. Okay, so we've seen the first part where myself, I feel slavery was not good. Let's see what Moses did. Do you remember that the Israelites were slaves in Egypt? Again, this story can be read in Genesis, but this is a time when Moses grew up in Egypt. The story begins here. You read how Moses ended up growing up in the palace until he knew that, oh, he's a Hebrew. He's not even Egyptian. So he started visiting his Hebrew people. Okay. And they were slaves, and the Bible says they were mistreated. Let's read here. One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his people were and washed them at their hard labor. So they were working as slaves with hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. Okay? Sorry, let me just cut my phone. Okay. Yeah, so he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking at this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So, one of the commandments we have, God gave us is do not kill. Okay? But we see that Moses, who was yet to become a prophet, he's the one doing the killing, which is bad. Okay? And now, the next day when he went there, he saw now two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew? What did they say? Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian? So Moses thought no one saw him, but somebody saw him. So he was afraid. Okay? Then when Pharaoh heard this, he tried to kill Moses. Moses had to flee. Okay? Now, Moses' life was in danger. Why? Because he killed an Egyptian. Why did he kill an Egyptian? Because the Egyptian was mistreating a Hebrew. A Hebrew was what? A slave. So already these are confusions. But now God's plan is not our plan. When Moses fled, that's when he met God. You can read that later on your own to see how really what happened. Now, let's go to the New Testament. The examples I've shown you are in the Old Testament. The New Testament starts with the Gospels of Jesus. Okay? Let's see what... okay, so you may ask now, why did God allow slavery? So there are things that God allowed. Like I told you, our God gives you a choice, okay? But we'll answer on the judgment day. So in this, the gospel according to Mark, there was a debate. People were asking Jesus if they can divorce or not, okay? And then Jesus told them, if you divorce your wife, you are committing adultery if you marry another one. Then they said, Moses permitted man to write a certificate of divorce and send away. What did Jesus say? It was because your hearts were hard that Moses wrote you this law, Jesus replied. But at the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his wife and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. They are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. So, meaning, this is where we drive as Christians to say, you are supposed to have one wife. Why? Because those guys were hard-hearted. If you read Exodus, you will see how Moses was struggling with them from the time they left Egypt until he died. They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. You know where Egypt is? up to Israel is a very, very short distance. But because of a lot of obstacles, other kingdoms fighting them, they were in the wilderness, no food. They had to eat manna. Some of them were even telling Moses, "Why did we leave Egypt? Now we are suffering here. In Egypt we were slaves, but we are eating meat and all that." So God was preparing them for the promised land. So sometimes Moses could allow certain laws because he was under pressure. Some were even worshiping other gods. They were making calves. And so on and so forth. But Jesus tells here, God's plan was not like this, but because of the hard-heartedness. So maybe even slavery, it is because of the hard-heartedness, or people were just doing their own. Okay? There are times when God was destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, it was too much sin. Just imagine the whole Gomorrah, only Lot, his wife, and the 2 daughters could be saved. But God says, if 10 people in Sodom are clean, I'm not going to destroy it. But what was in Sodom? Only Lot, who knew God, 4 members of the family, and the angels told them to leave before they destroyed that. So when it gets too much, God now intervenes. But before that, he gives us a free will to remember that it's him. He's the master of everything. Okay? So this is why we see some things like slavery, polygamy, all that they are in the Bible, and God allowed the people to do that. But let's check now, what is Mark saying? Why do we Christians now say some practices are not good? Let's read what Jesus answered when they were asking him about God's commandments and all that. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," Jesus answered, "is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength." This passage, you said, "Hear, O Israel," is in Isaiah. The prophet Isaiah wrote about it 700 years before Jesus came. So Jesus is quoting this from Isaiah. Then he goes on to say, the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than this. So he separated the 10 commandments and put them in one, because our 10 commandments from 1 to 4, they are about God. Worship God alone, do not make an idol, remember to reserve his day, and so on. That's the first one. The rest were telling how to live with one another. So let's dwell on the second one. Love your neighbor as yourself. In this case, your neighbor is any other person you are living with, whether here, whether in another town, and so on. But the point is, love your neighbor as yourself. Because if you love your neighbor or your other person, you are not going to hurt them, okay? You are not going to mistreat them. You are not going to despise them. You are not going to kill them. But look at what was happening, the passages we read about slavery. They were bad practices. But if there was love, in the first place, you're not going to tell your slave girl to sleep with your man, because are they willing in the first place? I don't know. Maybe they are just doing it because you've told them you are the master. Okay? So, if you love your neighbor, you won't do certain things. Let's check what Matthew 12, if I'm not mistaken. Remember, I've told you this is my perspective, and this is how I study the Bible. I just get a topic, check what the Bible is talking about, and I can assure you every situation that is happening is already prophesied in the Bible, and it's already talked about it. This Matthew 12, okay. There's a passage I wanted to show you which says, do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Okay, so if you want to do something bad to somebody, you should remember, what if it was done to me? Okay, anyway, let's Google. Let's Google. Do unto others as you'd want them to do unto me. Do unto others. Bible verse. Mark 12:31. It's also in Luke 10:27. So let's go Luke 10:27. Let's check it there if it's the one. No, is it the one? Mark 12:31. Oh yeah, I tapped Matthew. It must be Mark. Mark 12:31. I hope it is. Oh, love your neighbors just so now. This is the same one. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Matthew 7:12, not Matthew 12. It's Matthew 7:12. I really knew that it was Matthew and something to do with 12. So I typed chapter 12 instead of verse 12. Okay, so in everything here, do to others what you would have them to do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Okay? So Jesus says, only do something that you know if it is done to you, you'll be okay with it. So that's where we base some of the decisions as Christians are doing. Okay? I would not hurt my friend because I know if I'm hurt, if he does the same thing to me, I won't feel good. Okay, so I'm going to end with the most hated apostle by Muslims, who's Paul. This is Paul's letter to the Galatians. So when Paul was ministering, each place he's writing a letter, he used to contextualize their beliefs and then he guides them. What did he talk about when he was talking to the Galatians here? So he says, so in Christ Jesus you are all children of God through faith, our faith. For all of you who were baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. There's neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. If you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. So he reflects on what Jesus was teaching and tells us to say we should treat each other equally, because Jesus came to die for everyone. Jesus came to preach to everyone, neither Gentile, neither Jew, slave or free, and so on. Okay? But at the same time, he tells slaves to obey their earthly masters, because with respect and fear, slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Okay? Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. Serve wholeheartedly as if you are serving the Lord, not people, because you know that the Lord will reward each one of whatever good they do, whether they are slave or free. Then he goes to the masters and tells them, and masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism in him. Okay, so Jesus Christ is the one being referred here as the master. But the earthly masters should treat their slaves equally. But how many people are able to treat slaves equally? How many people treat their maids or their servants equally? In your house, if you have 2 maids, 2 servants, garden boys, and so on, I'm sure as humans there's always favoritism, but that's not supposed to be. Okay? There's nowhere where it says, okay, stop slave trade in the Bible, but it's telling us, remember, treat them equally. But the best is if we can stay without slaves. You know, the slaves, they were not getting paid. The only maybe thing they could get is food The master gives them, they have their own possession, a few of it, clothing and so on. But for now, as we have servants, we have maids, we pay them. So it was different in the olden times. But remember, do unto others how as you would want them to do to you, and also love your neighbor as you love yourself. So this is my perspective according to the example you are giving, and I'm going to post this to you. If you still have any question, I am free to attend to you again. I would like, I always want to have a discussion where we share. I share my perspective of my Christianity side. If you want to share something on your Islamic side, we share. It's really not my wish to see how people insult each other on Facebook and so on. No. Sometimes, yes, I post something to say, look, Islam says this and Christianity says this. Let's think about it. But of course, people are different. This will say this will say that. But really, it's not my wish that people should be insulting each other or condemning each other. But it's just to bring out the truth from either side, and then people will decide on their own. So for now, I'll end here. But if you still have any question about my religion, please feel free, and I'll always answer from my perspective, but I'll always quote the Bible. And sometimes I even quote the Quran. I can quote the Quran where I feel we are talking the same language and so on. And we'll go on like that. So thank you very much. It's night time in my country right now. So I would say good night to you. See you next time.